So welcome to the first of this year's webinars as the British Design Fund launches our Fund 3. The title of it is Out of Lockdown, What to Look For When Investing in Product, but I can imagine with the highly experienced and entertaining panel members, we'll stray all over the place, but that should make it fun. So I'm going to ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves just briefly, and then we'll get into a question and answer session. So I'm delighted that I'm joined by three wonderful people, Vasiliki, Jenny, and Nate. So welcome all of you. Vasiliki, would you like to start off and just tell us a little bit about Sapphire Capital?
Yes, hello everyone, good morning. My name is Vasiliki Carson, and I am a partner and founder of Sapphire Capital Partners. We are a company based in London and Belfast and provide investment management solutions for the micro VC space. We primarily manage EIS and SCIS funds, but we also have LPGPs as well. The company was formed in 2009 with myself and my husband, Boyd, and we are now managing around 90 million in assets over 35 funds. We do a variety of sectors from technology, robotics, carbon neutral, to the British Design Fund.
Thank you. What? Tell me just one thing. The British Design Fund sounds very different to many of the other funds that you're involved in. Do you want to just say why you were attracted to it?
Yes, the British Design Fund definitely provides the most unique offering of all of our funds. And the reason is because of manufacturing and innovation. The solutions that the British Design Fund provides answers to critical problems that have been in society for a very long time. It is very important for the British government to support innovation through funds like the British Design Fund, because this is how we will be progressing as a country, as a whole. And the government is indeed very proud of its position as being highly ranked for startup and entrepreneurial activity. We wish to continue supporting the UK's efforts to be labeled as fertile ground for innovation in product technologies and in design.
Great, thanks very much indeed. So Jenny, can I ask you to go next? And Jenny, you must have been one of our very first investee companies back in 2019, I think it was. Yeah, do you want to tell us about Cala?
It was March 2017 when I pitched it. Yeah, it was back then, all the way back then in March, and I think the investment finally went through in November, I think it was, of that year. It was later on. So yeah, Cala is a brand of beautiful and stylish footwear, especially designed to fit like the ones over here, and they're especially designed to fit the feet of women who suffer from bunions and other problems with feet as well, and set up the company because I suffer from bunions, felt it like a personal pain, and I always thought that with some kind of adjustment of normal footwear, then you could make shoes that were just as beautiful as things you find on the high street, but that were comfortable for with feet like mine. So the company launched in 2016. Before the company launched, I actually met Dave as part of an accelerator program, and met with Dave, who was interested in the business. In 2017, I met with BDF, and yeah, I think I was the first company that I said yes to. So I was shocked at the time actually with that, because I didn't even know I wanted to invest at the time, but it was the best thing that ever happened to the business, and we were able to double turnover, with that investment. So we've sold thousands of pairs of shoes now to women all over the world. Our business model is predominantly via our e-commerce website. I think we're up to like 58 or 59 countries now that we've sold shoes to via that website. And our shoes have been worn by celebrities like Dame Darcy Russell, the ballerina, and Tamsin Outhwaite, the actress. And last year in lockdown, or like 12 months really, it has been a tricky time for colour, because you can see behind me, my shoes are mainly meant to be worn at the house. They're not meant to be worn indoors. The British Footwear Association recently released a report to say that the footwear and leather industry was down by 49% in the last 12 months, but colour managed to by 15%. And I think it's mainly because we're selling more to our existing customers. We're operating in a niche, and we were out new marketing activities as well to reach new audience. So yeah, so that's colour.
Thanks very much, Jenny. I don't know how we do it, but you've got a bit of an echo on your line. Maybe you just need to sit near the microphone or something.
Right. Oh, I'll move. I've got like a sieve microphone. I'll move. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Yeah.
That's better, I think. Great. Thanks very much indeed, Jenny. So, from one of the very first to one of the latest, Nate, do you want to tell us about Koala?
For sure. I don't have one of those studio mics, so I'll just lean in. But yeah, so
Talk loudly.
I'll shout, I'll enunciate. Yeah, no, hi everyone. I'm Nate, one of the founders of Koala. And in a nutshell, we're trying to make prosthetics that are comfortable and accessible to everyone on the planet, which is quite exciting. It's probably easier to show you. So this is traditional kind of prosthetics. We can get into it, but they suck. Very Captain Hook. You don't want these. Boys, we make them. And Jenny, as well, I maybe offline, I'd love to talk to you about shoes and stuff, but we make them more like clothes and like shoes. So they're actually comfy to wear. They look nice, and they're about 20 to 50 times cheaper than anything else. So that's a lot of fun. And we've only been going, we actually set up as a brand this time last year, which was interesting timing. And it's been a hell of a year, which I'm sure will be fun to get into. But I met Damon before we set up as Koala, and I think the British Design Fund, it's cool to be part of this, because you're probably the only guys that I've pitched to a lot of people, probably the only guys that understand the difference between making physical products. Like, we live in a world where lots of people are working in software, and making atoms is very different. So yeah, it's a cool ecosystem to be part of. So yeah, anyway, that's a short.
And tell us just a little bit about where you are at the moment, and going to market and the like.
Oh, it's been insane. So we're all about accessibility, and trying to help the people that are least well served. So you can imagine, by having prosthetics that are really rigid and tough, children are the ones who are the most hard to essentially service with these things, and most kids under the age of 9 to 12 just really don't have anything, because by the time you've made a rigid sort of prosthetic thing, they've relentlessly changed size and now it doesn't fit them. So so we organically got approached by a lot of parents of young children, see if we could do something for them. Really exciting. Got approached by a bunch of limb loss charities across the UK, Douglas Bader Foundation, Alex Lewis Trust, and essentially said, okay, what would it take to make these soft prosthetics available to every child in the UK? And it turns out it's really doable. So we're about halfway through that. It's called Project Limitless, and yeah, it's insane. So we're just we're arming kids left, right, and centre at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. That's super. Thanks very much indeed, Nate. And then Damon, are you going to tell us a little bit about the British Design Fund and what we're all about and what our philosophy is?
Sure. So for those that don't know, I'm Damon, CEO of British Design Fund. And for those that don't know, we support, we're one of the only ones out there really supporting early stage product design and manufacturing companies based out of the UK. So supporting the inventors and innovators here and now that are solving problems that should be solved, addressing needs, compelling needs. So myself and John founded it. Yeah, well, Jenny, you were one of the first. So we're sort of three going on 4 years in now, and we set it up because it was very obvious there was a gap in not just the funding space, but also in the kind of support that the early stage companies needed when they were taking the products through to market. I mean, it really built up from there. So, we've got great mix of companies within the portfolio, great pipeline coming through. But yeah, the thing that holds everything together is like the similarity between all the companies. There's a physical element of manufacturing to all of them, and some IP within that innovation. And the ideas are sort of protected, and they're limited UK companies and are SEIS or EIS. But yeah, and as John, as you mentioned, we're the third fund is open to investors currently.
Great. Thanks very much indeed. So in a way, it's quite ironic. I was in the car first thing this morning doing my Good Samaritan job, and I realized that, of course, by happenstance, we're having this webinar literally on the year anniversary of when lockdown happened a year ago. And I mean, obviously, it's been a really difficult year for so many people, but it strikes me that there's an awful lot been going on in the world of innovation and enterprise. I'd be quite keen to ask, just get some people's thoughts about how lockdown has impacted product innovation and development. And Nate, I mean, it's quite interesting hearing from you that actually you were as busy as anything. Do you want to just tell us about how the last year has been for you, and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned from it that you might be able to take forward into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's been a hell of a year. We actually went into our own, well, we went to working from home, so we weren't locked down. We went into working from home about a fortnight before Boris told us to, because we wanted to ease into it. We thought it was coming, and so we wanted to ease into it, and then it just so happened that we got ahead of it. But my major worry, I was pretty sure we could do all the communication and tech and most of the jobs from home. I think I was really worried about was just because we're at a core just a design team. So I was really worried that, like, not sitting around one table, like handing over bits of prototypes and actually chatting in the room, I thought that would be a massive limiting step for what we're doing. In a weird way, it's the opposite. So we moved home, and when we moved home, that included like moving home our 3D printers and our sewing machines and everything. So literally, like, our bedrooms were populated like mini factories. And I think because we were so aware that it's going to be tough to communicate, we communicated more. We were talking a lot more often, which is good. And because the sort of, you're now sat in where you'd be prototyping stuff, everything is right there on your desk. The loop from like idea to like prototype was very, very, was much tighter.
Right. Okay.
So actually, we ended up doing way more, way quicker. I think the main lessons, is just, I think it's different for us from big companies because we were tiny, and we're still tiny, but back then we were only like 5 of us. And in a startup, like you guys all know, like in a startup, you're used to coming in Monday and everything's a catastrophe and you have to start again. Like, you're just used to that. So it kind of felt like the pandemic was just that on a global scale, just like shaking the world like a snow globe and saying, think again. So we were kind of in that mindset and kind of just excited to do something new. And so yeah, it
so maybe if the lesson you learned was that the importance of communication, that actually almost in a sense, because the lockdown was making communication more difficult, you actually had to get the pendulum swing to the opposite and communicate more. Interesting.
Their ideas, and it's something we'll carry on now.
Yeah. What about you, Jenny? How's product innovation been for you this year?
It's been slower than when we would normally. I think the pace we would normally move at. And
Jenny, do you want to just move the mic?
Right. Okay. Is it? How's that? I don't know what's on. So yeah, it's been always that. Is that okay? Am I still echoey?
A little bit echoey, but it's
Right,
fine.
okay.
I
don't know. Anyway, so yeah, so our factories are in Portugal, our footwear factories, and obviously we can go to see them. Normally, I go out about every 3 months because I'm quite hands-on with product development process, and my room, like, this is the tidy bit that you can see here, but it's full of boxes of samples and stuff because everything's being boosted to me at the moment. So when you're waiting for post during COVID, I've had a box of samples that arrived this week that was sent to me in December. You know, these types of things have held up the process. So it's not that we're not doing things quickly at our end, it's the world has slowed down. But we have had to rethink about, you know, the types of shoes that we're going out in 2021. So like the heels are kind of a no-go. Like there's kind of, we kind of know that the special occasions and all of those things, the weddings, the races, and you know, all of those that you kind of would wear a pair of heels to aren't happening even this year. So we didn't put our design focus on making more and more of those. We kind of switched to thinking about more casual styles. I kind of wish I'd done slippers, you know, before, but I didn't. Slippers and trainers were sellouts last year. We tried to collaborate with a slipper brand, and they said we can't because we haven't got stock. Like they kind of sold this. They were using their winter shoes in winter slippers, and then they sold them instead. But anyway, that's like a insight, wonderful thing. So basically we just started working with a factory to design, bring more casual styles and focusing more on that side. So trainers, more flat styles, and we introduced a new flat type of shoe that has quickly become one of our best sellers. And I'm also looking at bring out a slipper, like it's going to be supportive to wear at home, a house shoe basically, and we're on that on the sustainable side as well. So we have, it's not like we haven't been thinking of lots of you know new designs. It's just the process has been a bit slower than I would normally like because it's hard to explain how to change something over Zoom to a factory in Portugal when they don't really, English isn't their first language anyway. So it's been tricky. I wait to get back out there.
Yeah. So Jenny, do you think, do you believe what people are saying that we're going to hit the roaring 20s soon and everyone's going to be out and using every possible occasion to get out and about, and that's going to turn things around?
I do. I mean, I think that people, as soon as we get some good news in the news, we can like a little spike in sales of different types of shoes.
Yeah.
Now we still have stock of our summer sandals, you know, our heels from last year because we didn't sell through them because selling the more casual styles. So we have noticed spike in people buying because people start thinking about it and making plans. I honestly think it's going to be a little while before those sales get back up to the point of before, even though we need more comfortable heels than ever before because the feet won't have been used to being to wear heels. I think that the casual trend is going to last out for 2021. So we've done things like introduce the heels, you know, and shoes. Can't show you, but shoes really bright colours. Because I've got a real strong feeling that people are going to want to go out and go, dare, you know, not black tops like I'm wearing now, but they're going to want to wear something that's quite bright and out there because they've been hidden away at home so long.
And have you learned, what sort of lessons have you learned about how quickly you can turn things around and how you need to react to things very quickly?
I think that we're like Nate, we're quite lucky because we're small, so we can respond quicker than maybe a big company could. And on Ols, as we were making in Portugal, their downtime wasn't as didn't have as much of an impact access it people who are manufacturing in China, and I know that like large like Clarks really struggled delivering orders last year because they couldn't because the shoes weren't being produced. Unfortunately, our factory wasn't closed that long. They still had problems there with people having been to like at home and isolate and stuff, but nowhere near the people had. So we were able to respond really quickly. And if I want to, can like develop. It normally takes around 6 months to develop a shoe, but if I want to, I can decide a shoe now and bring it out in 6 months. Where most larger companies, they need a lot longer than that. They'll need like 12-18 months.
Okay,
so
good.
So
as you grow, you want to try and keep that sort of flexibility built into the way that you operate.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why they shouldn't do. I think around decision making and just making decisions quickly. There are lots of organisations that do things really quickly and get things to market. And I think that while we're able to have a factory that can respond quickly, I think that's the key.
Okay, great.
And the B2C model helps as well anyway, because B2B, like we're designing ridiculously spring summer 2022 now, because if we won't do any wholesale, they'll start buying that in the next few months.
Okay, great. All right. So it's great, isn't it? You know, I think we're all thinking that we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and that's not another train rushing at us full pelt. Despite everything that Boris is saying about watching out what's happening on the continent. So Damon and Vasiliki, I'd quite, because I know that you're looking at innovation all the time and talking to companies every day of the week. What are you seeing in terms of startup activity so far this year? Damon, will we start with you?
Yeah, so I'd say this year noticeably quite a kind of quite an uptick in the number of applications we're getting through, and a real mixture. So I mean, just the volumes are up, so people just directly coming to the site and applying. And there's certain trends that we see, as you'd kind of expect. I mean, we've all gone through a very shared experience the last 12 months, so you get a lot of there's a lot of things geared around, say, PPE. You know, there's a lot of things around different types of mobility, how we're getting around now. Shifts, changes in kind of travel and behaviour. So you see a lot of those, and I suppose, you know, what our job is at the British Design Fund is to kind of try and see through anything that's kind of too opportunistic and try and find the ones that actually will be here for the long term. You know, so because there are some new, you know, there's some new behaviors that are coming in, and they will be here for beyond the next 12 months, and they're interesting to look at. But there's obviously some that are very opportunistic that will fade out as we move back to a certain degree of normality. So we see that, and then I suppose in terms of some of those businesses that some of those sort of inventors and founders that we've been keeping an eye on for the last maybe few years, I've seen quite a lot now. I think there's an element, certainly with this third, it is the third, isn't it? The last lockdown we're going through. I think there's an element because, yeah, I mean, we really have been restricted in what we can do. I think there's quite a lot of inventors that have kind of sat back and dusted off some of their old ideas, because they are maybe at home, they're in the studio, they're spending much more time. They're really reflecting more. I think this time they're not. You know, it's not the novelty of the first lockdown where the weather was kind of good and, you know, it was horrible, but it was unique and novel. This one, they're really sort of inside a lot, and so I've seen quite a lot of the companies that we've been tracking, keeping an eye on, and kind of hoping that they'd move their ideas forward slightly so that they're at a point that we could consider them. So those are certainly coming back. And I suppose my another sort of caution, I don't want to sound too sort of negative about stuff, but a cautionary note, I suppose, when we're looking at those ideas that are coming through now, is to be aware that, and Nate, it was interesting what you were talking about in terms of your, like it kind of positively moved on your product development process, but I know that you've got the user basically built into your business. You live and breathe it, you know, with kind of your team. But there's some, you know, we have to be careful with some of the sort of the applications we see in the startups where they can make a very convincing 3D render. You know, like, you know, you can almost, if you've got the software and you're a talented enough designer, you can sit at home and you can get your product to the point that it looks so real. You know, and you could run it off and 3D print it. You can think that you're getting it close to market, but the big bit, you know, that we have to be very, almost like hyper aware of now is that a lot of these companies probably have missed out on the iterations and the user testing and that dialogue with the user, like really trying to break it, use it, make a rough prototype, put it in the hands of the people that use it. That element, like, you know, there are ways of doing it. You know, you can do that remotely. You have been able to do that remotely over the past, but it's just something that I'm very aware of. You know, you almost have to, you know, but we're aware of it anyway. You see these, you see the crowdfunding campaigns with these amazing looking products, and you kind of, you know, a lot of it's kind of rendered. But yeah, it's just that's just a cautionary note, I suppose, from my side of things that I've observed and thought, you know, are some of these how road tested are some of these ideas, or have they been do they just exist as renders, and you know.
Great.
Because that's actually such a good point. I mean, that was another thing I was super worried about, because, you know, we're making stuff for people who have one arm, sometimes no arms. So I have both of mine. So I need to shut up and listen. So that's what we need to do all the time. And I was really worried that because people would visit people, and that's I find the best way that we design things, just go and hang out with people and see how people interact with the world. And you can do that. And again, I was really surprised actually by, probably because people at home are not doing anything, they're even more open for like, send me something, yeah, I'll try it out, I'll send you videos. So we did lots and lots of it. But it's so true that there's certainly at the early stage of what we were doing, the first prototype we made, it was us 4 engineers back at uni. We sat in a room and just catted to Kingdom Come and then said, oh, we've done it. That's just not how things work. It's people, people make your product. So definitely echo that. Like, things need testing, and I would take advantage of the fact that, I don't know what the audience is today, but like, I would take advantage of the fact that people are open to try stuff, because there's not a lot else going on at the moment.
Well, that's a really interesting point you make, Nate. And actually, there's a piece of research that Innovate UK have done, which says that something like 42% of startups fail because they don't engage with their customer properly and don't really understand what the customer's needs are. And I think it's interesting, your point about technology. There's far too much of startups who have developed a piece of technology and then try and find an audience for it, which is not the right way of going about it. Anyway, Vasiliki, would you like to answer that point about the sort of startup activity that you've been seeing this year so far?
Indeed, we have definitely seen the pace picking up the first quarter of 2021. Last year was a very challenging year, especially for EIS and SCIS companies. There was a drop actually in EIS companies by 30%. So there were 30% less EIS qualifying companies seeking to raise investment than the prior year. We have quite a unique vantage point in that we see both advanced assurance applications. I mean, companies that are trying to get their advanced assurance to qualify for EIS and SCIS investment, as well as our funds making placements and investments. So we have, I think, a front seat to the country's innovation. And what do we see? It's just what David was saying, the fundamental shift in the way we live is creating quite interesting propositions coming through, trying to reconfigure the way we do things through technology, through online mobile platforms. Connectivity that used to be done face-to-face is now going virtual. Things that you never knew that could be done virtually are being done virtually. So we see a lot of technology. We see a lot of ESG, a lot of carbon neutral technologies coming through, a lot of robotics. But what the British Design Fund provides is solutions to long-term problems. And the Housebots investment, for example, that relates to addressing certain safety considerations as well. In terms of the way investors appear to be reacting, we are definitely in the year of value investing. And what value investing means in the micro VC world is investing in companies that have an underlying asset that's robust and it's defensible. They have strong management teams and proven track records. We've just come out of a long spurt of growth investments where people did not really value that much proof of concept. So that there was a lot of money going into good ideas with no underlying proof of concept completion. So that is now going into this value investing scenario where the underlying intellectual property becomes of more importance. The actual asset and where it is in the life cycle of productization, commercialization comes into play. So we see that even though we are still in the EIS and SCIS world, which is what constitutes risk capital, there's still the element of value investing and investors seeking out those opportunities that have this underlying loss aversion per se.
Sure. So, given I hear what you're saying about value investing, are you finding that there is money out there for investment, that people are, have maybe been reticent to invest in the last 12 months, but are, have coming out from underneath the stones and with large bundles of cash in each hand?
We have been busier than ever. And now this is our high season, busy season as well by tax year end. So for placements of this year and of the past year. So we have been busier than ever, not only in terms of investments, opportunities, but in terms of placements as well. The EIS and SEIS schemes are very, very important to having a diversified portfolio approach. It's becoming something that not only high tax rate payers participate in, but even lower tax rate payers could show their support for a company that is personal to them or to their family members. So yes, it's definitely.
But it's quite interesting you talking about value investment. Just going back to Nate's point about validating your concept, it's so important.
Yes, I do believe that the more validation and the great thing about COVID is that people that are coming up right now for investments are much more purposeful. They have thought things out quite carefully, and because the world has stopped, people have really focused in on what really matters. And we see this actually in our due diligence requests. The output or the information that the companies provide as a result of our due diligence questions is of much higher quality than it was prior. And what does that do? It makes companies more robust. It makes a business continuity plan, which was something that was highlighted across all size sectors of the investment community. Now we're seeing startups coming in with business continuity plans, COVID plans. This provides value for companies and provides a safety net for investors.
Well, I know firsthand, Vasiliki, that the due diligence process is becoming much more rigid, much tougher, because Damon and I are having to work much harder getting companies through the very rigorous due diligence process that you go through. And that must be a good reassurance for investors, mustn't it?
Indeed, the FCA have the regulations, the Section 21 regulations, that really every single statement is verified and through third-party sources, and it's very important to ensure the integrity of what we present as a business opportunity. So
okay, great. Okay, so look, we've talked a little bit about the past. Let's shift to the future, and let me ask Nate and Jenny, what's happening in the future? What opportunities do you see over the next 12 months? And where are you going to take things in the future, and what's the next big steps for each of you? Nate, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think leading on from what you guys are talking about, for us, our initial assumption when we set up Koala was that we would do the design and then find a manufacturer that's already making this kind of stuff and get them to make it for us. So, we at the start of the year, last year we were doing stuff in China, and obviously that didn't pan out because they were a bit busy doing other things. So what that forced us to do was move manufacturing in-house, which we thought would be a nightmare. But it turned out it really wasn't. And it actually turned out to be a benefit because it meant we could make, production quality, products that we could just send out and control really closely and understand from end to end where there was opportunities to improve the design and this and that. But also it kind of gave us a model that we can, because we have a global kind of ambition, because people, Limlos doesn't care about where you are, it's everywhere. It gave us a kind of model that we can start to port to other countries in a very scalable but manageable way, because we've done it already. Mm-hmm. It made us sort of figure out how to work with the most remote people completely virtually in our home country, which is perfect because you can do that anywhere in the world. So we started doing a lot of stuff internationally much sooner than we originally would have thought in the plan. It's all been organic, because you can imagine very brief, like to get a prosthetic, you need to go to a clinic, to a traditional one. You need to go to a clinic. You need a trained, specific person to handcraft it to you and manhandle you. So anything COVID related, that just couldn't happen. So around the world, prosthetics shut down, and so demand all over the place. So yeah, essentially just porting what we've learned in the UK to other
So
countries.
essentially, you've used the last 12 months to fundamentally rethink your business model.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely accidental because we didn't have the resources to set up brick and mortar clinics. Like at the start, we didn't, so we were like, okay, how can we redesign the product to make it really easy to fit like clothes? Like, this problem's been solved. We were sure it had been solved, so we do it that way. It was only when lockdown happened that we kind of realized, like, okay, we're always talking about like the comfort and the flexibility, but actually one of the most, like, the high order bit for what's interesting is that it's completely end-to-end virtual. You can post these things to people now. So in terms of accessibility, that's a game changer. That's something that is relevant no matter where you're on the planet. So it was changing the focus of the business model, but it was more just recognizing like what is the really important thing here that's different, and communicating that and like building that out. And it's been exciting.
And how is that going to affect you as you think about scaling up? And orders start flooding in from all over the world?
Well, the problem is they already have. So I mean, like that's why sort of everything with BDF is timing quite well, because obviously you guys know about manufacturing, and so over the last 3 months we've gone from making maybe literally like 2 or 3 prosthetics a week to outputting about 30. And so we had to get a new factory space, get assembly lines, hire like workshop technicians, and so it's scary, but at the same time we realized it's really manageable, and it surprised us how quickly you can meet those volumes and scale up. So it's not, essentially just by doing it, we've realized it's not without the realms of possibility to service anyone anywhere in the world.
Sure.
And like I said, we've really been sort of like doing pilots in Sri Lanka, Sierra Leone, Syria, even with refugees.
Oh, right. Wow.
And we're always shocked that how just doable it is. We seem to be in an industry where a lot of the problem isn't that, this stuff's hard. It's just that people haven't looked at it and they haven't done it in a different way before. So that's the kind of opportunities for us to just find these needy places and just collaborate.
And so despite my glass half full nature, I recognize that there probably will still be challenges in the next 12 or 18 months ahead of us. What do you think the challenges are, or are you not worried at all?
Still to me?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of existential things. I mean, I think the challenge, for us, and I don't think it's an insurmountable one or a hard one, but it's one that we think about a lot, is just we're getting bigger very quickly, like very quickly. We want to keep a handle very, very tightly on quality, on the service of because we're looking after people. Yes, we make products and we do, but we're looking after people at the end of it. It's holistic support, and I think the challenge is keeping that personal touch, that high quality personal touch,
right,
get bigger very quickly. But I think it's just an academic point. We just have to think about it and keep checking it every stage. It's not something that's existential.
And so, Jenny, does that resonate with you as well?
In terms of is this better? I've changed my microphone.
Well, I was thinking specifically about, because in many ways you're the same. You're dealing with people, and so quality and service have got to be 2 real important things, haven't they?
Yeah, I think there was. I mean, we're not really like Nate, but we are in terms of thinking about how a problem that causes this pain can be solved with flexible, soft materials and that kind of thing. And one of the things that we can pride ourselves in is trying to offer as personal a service as possible to people remotely, because we sell online, and when you've got problems with your feet, shoes is already hard. Then actually, when you've not got a store that you can go into and try them on, it becomes even harder. So we try our best to try and offer a personal service, you know, in terms of getting as much information from the customer as possible, so that we can tell them, A, this is the type of shoe that is best for you, or B, you know, maybe we're not right for you. I'd sooner not sell a pair of shoes to somebody if perhaps, you know, we didn't have what they needed. And that personal service, I think, has, you know, got to carry on. We all the feedback is that shoes, they're beautiful, they weren't quite right for me, but I'll be back if you start doing this type, you know. And by offering that kind of service, you can actually get back later, just because whatever, it wasn't the right color or whatever at that time. So yeah, that I want to be able to continue going forward. And I do a lot of personal stuff with the customers as well. And in lockdown, a lot of what we did from a marketing point of view was me talking directly to the customers, you know, via social media, through Facebook and Instagram, making videos, talking about, you know, the shoes and the features and the technical aspects of them more comfortable. And actually, because people were in lockdown, we had nothing else to do, our engagement was much higher than it was normally, and we were able to kind of grow those social channels because of that. And the personal story, and, you know, my personal story actually resonates, you know, with these people, and it means that they're more likely to kind of come back to me and tell me their story and how Cala helped them, and that then helps other customers. So
Sure.
it's, you know, that personal, you know, people telling their own personal pain points and their own personal stories, it's integral to the Cala brand, really. How are people going to trust that what is, you know, is right for their future?
Yeah.
Well.
Okay, great. So let me ask maybe Damon and Vasiliki. I mean, you know, we're coming to the end of lockdown. We definitely are coming to the end of lockdown. What opportunities do you think there are for product startups? And if you've got some words of advice about what they should be thinking about as the economy bounces back, what would they be? Damon, will we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose, like we've heard both really from Nate and Jenny, about how although we've spent the last 12 months spending a lot less time around, like, physically in people's presence, we spent there's certain elements that have been enhanced, so we've actually been able to get to know people a lot better and get closer to our users. So I think that sort of, I think people have realized that can work. It's not, we don't want it to be the only way that we communicate with our users or consumers, but we know it can work quite well, and it is very scalable. You can reach people very quickly. You can have quick dip in sessions, like you can do a Zoom for 15 minutes with a consumer focused thing. I think that, combined with and again, we deal with both consumer. So really, you know, Nate and Jenny, you're like, we've got kind of like a consumer model. I mean, Nate, you're direct to user as well, but it's, you know, it's a little bit more of a sort of almost like some of your channels would be B2B traditionally. But I think kind of what we'll see over the next few years now is people realizing that they can't rely on some of those other routes to market. So Nate, some of those clunky institutional channels that I'm sure you'll activate, that will get activated, but you can't rely upon them. And some of them have been really disrupted over the last 12 months. Some of them don't exist anymore. Some of them are coming out of lockdown, like Jenny. Some of your, you know, just think of some of the physical places where your shoes would have potentially been sold in this year. Some of those resellers just don't exist, or they've scaled back. They're operating in different ways. So I think kind of a big thing for me, and this is a massive opportunity, I think, it's what we're all about at the fund, is putting the user at the center of your business, is building your business around that user, you know, a lot more direct to user and direct to consumer focus on all startups, and the priority with when you activate some of those channels, and this works, you know. I know it's sometimes hard to kind of get your head around some of those concepts when they're really industrial B2B products, but you can still reach out directly to some of those users. You can still bypass some of those institutions, some of those intermediaries, you know, the wholesalers, and get direct to the person that's using your product. And I think that's what we're sort of seeing now, and that's a massive opportunity. You know, you learn so much more from your user. Your margins are normally significantly higher. You can be much more reactive. It impacts your product development, and you can just move at your own pace. You can speed it up, slow it down. It really sets the foundation for your business, because a lot of these relationships are very sticky, whereas, you can get one big institution or intermediary buy from you and then they disappear in 6 months' time, or they just choose to go somewhere else. But if you're really fulfilling a need, like Jenny, your rate of repeatable business that your business gets is amazing, and that's really sticky. It's really hard to get rid of it. You'd have to do something scandalous as a brand to lose them all overnight. You'd really have to try hard to. So I see that as a really good thing, and coupled with it, with the consumer side of things, like going back to consumer product, I hope the high street does. It's got to lick its wounds and come out of this in some shape or form. But I kind of hope we maybe move a little bit away from the cut and paste kind of, those retailers that we all know they are. We all just prefer to go online because they offer no added value. And maybe we do shift back to, shift to a more experiential way of buying product. A more unique offering out there, something that actually encourages to get out back onto the high street for those consumer brands, because it's if they don't change, then I think people will just stay online.
So stick to a real focus on understanding user needs. That's still at the very heart of everything. But the big thing for you coming out of lockdown is just look at challenging business models, routes to market, because they're not the same as they were once. What that's done, all that's done is actually just present more opportunities. So different ways of doing business in the future. Don't be hidebound by conventions that were in the past.
Yeah, for sure.
Taliki, have you got anything to add to that?
Yes, I agree with what Damon's talking about. My addition would be sustainability. We find a lot of investors are seeking ESG investments, environmental, social, governance. So what we would like is for we want to stress the importance of a strong management team, and how making your consumers aware of your ethos, making consumers aware of your commitment to environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues through having a diversity policy very pronounced on your website, telling them what you have done to improve the environment or your carbon footprint. That's important to more people than you think. And you can see that through the public markets, the capital markets with the ESG funds. They're doing great. In light of COVID, in light of everything, they're great, giving great returns. So that's indicative of the importance of ESG throughout all size sectors. So from massive funds, multi-billion-dollar funds to micro VC. It should it's not dependent on the size of a company. We can all help in ESG in any small ways by participating with one sort of charter, or just being mindful of how much cardboard we consume, or where it's sourced from.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because Damon and I, we've sat in on many investment committees where we have people coming and talking to us, and we find that in general, the people who come to us with in some way a personal investment in the products that they've developed, whose companies and products have a real purpose, are the ones that come across most convincingly and actually have the most chance of success in the long run. I've spent a long time in the branding and design world, and back in the days, the big companies would come to us and want a new identity, and it was essentially lipstick on a gorilla. Nothing fundamental changed, but they just wanted to look different. And I think the days when you could pretend to be doing something are long gone, because your consumer sees through it. They can investigate you. They understand how to look at you and really understand what you're doing properly. So you've got to walk the talk. You can't pretend any longer. It's a really important lesson, I think. Okay, so I wondered if anyone had any questions that they might like to ask. So just stick your hand up or put a question in the Q&A, But Damon, it'd be quite interesting just whilst people are doing that, if you maybe talk about some of the most recent investments that the British Design Fund has made, just in the next few minutes.
Yeah, for sure. And I can kind of tie it in nicely with that, the last discussion around sort of ESG and impact. So a good example would be, so New Lane was a recent investment that was made. That's it's a compactable bike helmet to take advantage of the new sort of trends around mobility and getting around towns and cities. What makes that unique is actually the shape it folds down into, not necessarily how much the volume's reduced. But it's interesting. So my role before the teams come and pitch, I sort of work with them and coach. There's a few steps they have to go through before they come in and pitch. And once they get over the first one, I then start to invest a bit of time and coach and work with them on how they're going to present to the committee. And it's for that reason I don't have a vote on the committee. And with New Lane, it's interesting because from they, as we would expect from all businesses that we see that are serious, they have a consideration to the impact their product has on the environment. But they're a consumer targeted, they're a consumer product, so very much their marketing and messaging out to consumers really focused on kind of the materials they use, which are reclaimed from, 40% of it's reclaimed from oceans, so netting. But what I actually said to them, I said, look, be kind of careful how much you play that in the pitch, because we see so many businesses that try and make themselves unique through their impact. But then the function of the product is kind of lost. And I said, actually, it's almost a given now. Like we don't ever see a company come and pitch to us and tell us how terrible they are and how much of a negative impact they have. We expect them to have considered that. So my recommendation to them when they came in and pitched, I said, by all means, when you're talking about your sort of the positioning to the consumer, you can talk about it, but I'd really focus on this amazing innovation you've developed. And it's almost like a very quick nod to say, oh yeah, and obviously where possible, we're aware of the fact that we need to be considerate of the materials we use. So I thought that's a timely one. So so that's New Lane. You can see the video with Josh, the founder, on our website. But very excited to be sort of supporting them.
And tell us about Housebots, which Vasiliki mentioned earlier on.
So Housebots, So how to sum? So it is robotics, which is maybe a little bit unusual for ones that we see, but it's robotics, real purpose-driven business though. So addressing the health and safety needs of companies that are surveying at the exterior of large buildings, kind of blocks of flats and things like that. So whether it's painting them or taking a survey. So these guys have developed over the last couple of years, a sort of small robotic, effectively, think of it like a car that sucks itself onto the wall and can carry quite a heavy payload. So it means that instead of having to construct scaffolding, instead of having to, so the two big selling points are that it's quicker and cheaper. You don't need to erect scaffolding, but also through legislation, companies have to try something that endangers their staff less, so you don't have people on belays on abseiling down buildings doing surveying. So they really, that's one where it's kind of it's almost like the sales process for them is very straightforward. It's legislated that their target clients must at least consider alternatives that are safer, but also by using this product, it's hugely cheaper and quicker. So two very different ones. Both excited.
Good. Well, look, we're almost at the end of time, believe it or not. It's gone sailing by. Really thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I think some interesting things about same old, i.e. customer focus, really believe in what you're doing and really think that one through, but also some fantastic new ones that I think lockdown has said, look, there are new opportunities here, new ways to pivot, new ways to think about routes to market, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd just like to thank the panel fantastically for the contribution they've made. I'm not letting them off the hook yet because I'm going to ask them they've just got to come up with one last piece of advice for new enterprises this year and what they should do to make sure that they're going to be successful. So I'm going to start with Jenny. One thing, Jenny.
Well, I'm going to just follow on from what you guys have just said about the customer. And I would say that as much customer research as you can with lots of different people. Don't just rely on your friend, family, and the people that you know. You need to be reaching out there with the internet, and with the internet the way it is now, you can do that quite easily. You can push your net a lot further than people that you are physically in contact with. And before I launched Colour, I had people from Australia and America and all over the world who had kind of bought into the concept, and they were the ones that were driving the design. So that was the most important thing I'd always say. Don't just kind of go ta-da the business and without having that there's a real need. It's so easy to do that. Why wouldn't you do it?
Great, thanks very much, Dan. Nate.
That was definitely going to be my one, but I think the other one that I normally say, that I don't want to come across cynical, but I mean it, is that like you really, if you're going to start up something, you have to really fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve. Like you have to genuinely just really love the problem. Like don't fall in love with your solution to it. Don't like the idea of running a business, because if the last year showed us anything, it's that like tough stuff comes along out of nowhere, and there'll be sleepless nights and there'll be stress. So just fall in love with why you're doing it.
Right.
Genuinely hand on heart do, then you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. That's a really nice one. And the first time I've heard that put in such an articulate way. Well done. Vasiliki.
I would say communication, in light of what Nate was saying earlier, and Damon as well. Now we're having a more direct consumer relationship. We are working remotely. There's challenges. We don't have the face-to-face, but we can communicate it through our website, through our interactions with our clients. So communication is key. Tell them what you want them to know. Tell them that they're important. Make them feel important.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much indeed. And Damon, final word to you.
Okay, I think it's kind of a lot of the key stuff you said, but yeah, I mean, I'd say, echoing really Nate's, like be authentic, have a purpose. Users, consumers, they're savvy, they can see through, the lipstick on a gorilla, so, be a value, purpose-driven business, truly believe in what you're doing, solve a problem, address a need that should be addressed. And you're definitely a few steps up the ladder already at that point.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much indeed to our four panelists, and thank you very much to all of you attending. Here's to a wonderful next 12 months.